How wonderful to meet Elaine Ostrander. I have been reading about your research. It feels like forever, but of course it isn't really forever. But you have been sequencing the genes of dogs for at least 20 years because 20 years ago, the purebred boxer named Tasha was
Yeah.
the first dog to ever have her genome sequenced. And who did it? Elaine.
Wow.
And a few other people. I know you're not working in a vacuum.
First of all, thank you for having me. And
Pleasure
I
to meet you. You really
and
are
I
quite
represent
special.
and I represent lots and lots of people in my scientific community and in the dog
Yeah.
genetics community. Sequencing Tasha was such a highlight for us. We had seen the mouse get sequenced, we'd seen the human get sequenced, and I guess we figured maybe agricultural animals would be next. And
Right.
we didn't really know until NIH contacted us and said, aren't you going to put in a proposal to sequence the dog genome? And we're like, oh, yeah, we're going to do that. And
How that happened, the
yeah,
National Institute for Health, that
yeah,
is that represents human health questions and issues and research. They came to you and said, "Hey, how about the boxer?" Or you picked the boxer.
no, a little more history there than that. First of all, we did pick the boxer. My lab scanned a large number of dogs to find what dog was the most inbred. And that's because the statistics are much easier in terms of reassembling the genome if you have an inbred individual. So, genomes are sequenced in little bits and pieces randomly, and then the computer reassembles everything. It's not as though they're sequenced from the top of chromosome 1 to the bottom of chromosome 38 or whatever it is. And so we picked Tasha because she was relatively inbred and she was a gorgeous dog. And so she was photogenic, and that helped too.
That's funny.
But prior to us being approached, a paper had come out by Gordon Lark at the University of Utah. And it was very groundbreaking because for the first time, Gordon was able to show that a lot of the traits which we associate with different breeds, the head shape, the body size, the leg length, you could identify the underlying genes. They were mappable. They were genetic problems that could be solved. And that paper was different than what anybody else had published. And I was privileged to be a really tiny part of it. But it garnered the attention of people who were doing really sophisticated genomics at the time. And one of them said to me, aha, you guys have done something very interesting here. The dog genome should be sequenced because now we believe everything you keep saying you want to do is doable. It can be done.
When
And
you
that was the
say
driving force.
when you say a problem that can be solved, because those of us on the
Yeah,
outside of your
absolutely.
encapsulated world, we have to understand how your minds work because you are a closed community, very sharing with each other. From what I
Yep.
can tell, Gregor Larson, who I've now had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of times at Oxford University, he's involved also in some of the work that you're doing, or he
Yes.
reports on your work. And so when you say a problem to be solved, do you mean a question to be answered or an actual problem to be solved? Or is it more an intellectual pursuit of information?
It's really a whole bunch of questions that the community wanted to address and knew could be addressed, but we weren't quite sure how to go about doing it. So when you look across dog breeds, you can readily say that's a Dalmatian, that's a Golden Retriever, that's an English
Right.
Mastiff, and it breeds true. Every Dalmatian has spots, for instance, right?
Yes.
And so there's genetics under there. It's
Right.
absolutely crystal
Has to be.
clear. Right. And so how do you find those genes? And when you start thinking about it, you realize there are hundreds of traits when we consider the 350 dog breeds that are out there without even thinking about other canids, which Gregor does, that would present great opportunities for understanding mammalian biology and mammalian development and just understanding how did nature do this? As Gregor will tell you, dogs were domesticated only about 20,000 years ago. Most breeds have only been around since Victorian times.
That's
So,
right.
how did nature do this so fast? It's a small number of heavy hitting genes, much different than we see in so many other species. And that is a very overarching question to be solved. And then there's ever narrower and more incremental questions that we have interest in. Okay, what's the gene for this kind of dog cancer, and how does that help us
Yes,
understand human cancer? What's the
yes.
gene for this morphologic trait, and what does that same gene do in humans? What about behavior? We are a very collaborative community. That's absolutely true. And that has been one of our great strengths. That's why we've been so successful, because people share, and they share prior to publication. And they love to put together these big projects, these big papers that address big problems like aging or cancer or
Right.
other things. All those things came together, and it was our moment. And we knew it was our moment. It really was. I remember talking to Shawson Lynn Blateau, and she led the actual sequencing of the dog at the Broad. And we said, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. This is our moment.
Wow.
Let's do the very best we can. And we did. And we did.
That's very exciting to think of all of you scientists sort of scratching your heads and stirring the pot, the witch's brew of information, and seeing what comes to the surface and what you can learn, and then having a moment where a big light can shine and a lot of dollars can help you do it. Is it the big gene sequencing computer that costs so much money?
First of all, it costs a lot less to sequence a genome now than it did 20 years ago.
Oh,
At this point in time, thousands of dog genomes have been sequenced. Some through the effort of the Dog 10K project. Again, a bunch of us got together, said, look,
right,
we need to get these breeds sequenced. We got to get data out there. It doesn't, we'll publish it, but let's get it out there for people to use as reference genomes and to address whatever their problem is. So it costs way less. As with any genome, the first one is the most expensive one, because at that point in time, technology was not as developed, the machines
right,
weren't as sophisticated, the computer programs weren't something that
right.
were so easily used that summer students can do them now.
Yes.
And but the human genome moved very quickly. In one of the great things about being here at NHGRI, which is the National Human Genome Research Institute, is that human geneticists and genome experts have been very generous about passing down information, approaches, technology to people working in any area of genomics. Whatever your favorite organism is, they're always willing to step up and say, have you thought about this? Or your genome is different because it's really big. Your genome is different because it has a lot of repetitive DNA. Try this, try that. And so we, in turn, in the dog world, have now tried to do that. We invite people working on different genomes to come to our lab. We share technology. We think it's part of our responsibility,
Nice.
being in the federal government, to now do exactly what we were privileged to receive, to now help other people whose studies aren't as far along. And that's been fun. That's been a real
That's
privilege.
got to be an incredible feeling. So here's a question. When you say that Tasha the boxer was inbred, those of us that sort of know something or other about breeding think, oh, that's bad to be inbred. But you really mean line bred, like you keep breeding for the same quality.
Yeah.
It's a very negative word.
So let me rephrase the word inbred. So Tasha had, I would not actually say she's an inbred dog. I wouldn't say I know she's not been a line bred dog where she's been back crossed to individuals that she's closely related to. What made Tasha interesting was that there were a lot of regions of her genome where she got the same set of base pairs from mom that she got from dad. And that just solves a very practical computer problem, because you don't have to figure out which chromosome is mom, which chromosome is dad for that little piece of the genome, because they're the same. They're the same
I'll
thing.
be darned.
Yeah, and all dogs have regions of homozygosity like that. Some breeds have more than others, some dogs have more than others. And Tasha, out of the 200 dogs we tested, she came out on top. And she was very simply the dog that we chose to use. It could have been any of a number of other dogs of other breeds who had that same phenomena. Tasha happened at that time to have the most. Have we found other dogs that have more since then? Oh, yes, of course. And
Right.
in the thousands of genomes we've sequenced, yes, there are breeds more characteristically, there are dogs more characteristically, yes. But at that moment in time, she had the most. I wouldn't call her an inbred individual. She was healthy, she lived a long
Right.
life. I wouldn't say she's line bred. She wasn't being bred for a particular purpose, but she was what we wanted in the moment.
But is she what most purebred dogs are? in the fact that they share a lot of the mother's and father's chromosomes? And is that a health risk? That
It's
lead
such
to
a
a health risk?
Yeah, I love when people ask me that question because they say mixed breed dogs have hybrid vigor and purebred dogs are, that's going to be bad,
Right.
right? Not necessarily. So since one of the greatest rewards in this has been the growth in knowledge in the dog breeding community, and they have
Mhm.
embraced genetics, genetic testing, genomics. We
Yes,
every week we're invited to talk to some group of breeders, breed
I'll be darned.
club. Yeah,
No.
huge interest in taking that information and producing healthier, more long-lived dogs. So
Yes.
as a result of doing that, a lot of disease genes have mutations have been identified, and the breed clubs and the breeders are very good about testing for those.
No
And then
kidding.
not just saying, "Oh, we're never going to breed a dog who's a carrier
Right.
again," but gradually diluting it out of the gene pool by just not breeding carriers to carriers. And so what that means is there are purebred dog breeds that live until they're in their 20s, that live until they're in their late teens, and they're
Yes.
purebred. And by
Correct.
the same token, there are mixed breed dogs where it really depends what the component breeds were and the component dogs were. So if you mix together two breeds, both of which are at very high risk for hip dysplasia, guess what your puppies are going to have? Hip
Right.
dysplasia, right?
Yes.
And that's not gonna be as satisfying a pet as maybe if you went out and got a miniature poodle who's gonna live to be 18,
Who
right?
might have a luxating patella because a floating
Might
cap is common to miniature poodles, but maybe if you know about that gene, you amazing people know about it, then
and
the
the
breeders
breeder
who care will be aware of it. And then they won't have two parents that both tend towards that.
right.
And then of course cancer. I'd love to talk about ACL too, because I think that the physical, emotional, financial burden on owners of dogs who get ACL tears and require the repair is undervalued
Mm,
as a terrible impediment to a quality of life. We all think about cancer, but I've had
yeah,
so many dogs with ACL tears, and
really.
it was 5,000 a pop, and they were all mostly rescued Weimaraners, but then the hybrid vigor part collie dog, she tore the first ACL within 2 weeks of coming home from the
Mhm,
shelter. And then, of course, the other one, predictably, within 6 months. But those five to $6,000 surgeries, but the pain to the dog and the months of recuperation, and the fact that the dog will always be have arthritis in that joint and have pain in that joint, and their life will be diminished. That's something that you've paid attention to, the ACL, isn't it?
yeah. If we can broaden it just a little bit, I think one of the things people maybe outside our field don't think about, but dog owners do think about, is that a dog is a member of your family. And for
Mhm.
some people, given their life situation, it's the most important member of their family.
Yeah,
And that means if your dog's hurting, you're hurting. If your dog's suffering, you're suffering.
right.
And people tell me over and over, it's not the money. It's just like watching one of my kids suffer,
Absolutely.
watching one of my siblings suffer. It's just so hard. And it's so hard to know that they're going to carry some remnant of whatever that unfortunate trait was for years to come. And so what I think has been good is the response of the breeding community, and I don't mean every breeder, but compared to when I first started, it's been overwhelming that the breeders come to me and say, find my mutation, study my breed, come talk to my. I've had neighborhoods I've met in the basement of
Oh
someone's
my
house with
goodness.
eight something lovers who want to talk to
Yes,
me. And I've
yes,
given talks to thousands of people the next day. So there's a high motivation to have healthier, happier, more long-lived
yes,
dogs on the
yes,
part of most people. But none of it changes the hurt when it's your dog. That's just as real and just as present. And for some people, it's the biggest emotional drain they're ever going to go through. And because we in the community, I think almost all of us own dogs. I have 2 people in my lab, each of whom have 3 dogs. Everyone else has 1 or 2, but between the 2 of them, they got 6. And
To
so
work?
no, NIH doesn't let them come to work,
I
no.
wouldn't have
But
thought so.
a lot of places do, and when I was at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, they let me bring Tess, my border collie, to work, and she was great because there were patients on other floors, and she certainly couldn't interact with them, but the patient families were there day after
Right.
week, and she would go jogging with them, and she'd go to the grocery store with
Oh,
them, and she'd
wow.
play with the kids with the Frisbee out. She was really fantastic and made a difference in a lot of people's lives. And it's different now and it's different times, but you never really know the ways in which your dog affects other people. That's one of the
That's
things I
right.
learned. You never know. And however much they bring you joy or they bring you hurt, they're affecting other people as well. And so our motivation in the genome community has been we try, if someone's working and making great progress on osteosarcoma,
Yeah,
which is something a couple of labs have worked on, then I'm not going to go and work on osteosarcoma. I don't want to
right,
compete just to compete or to
right,
show I'm whatever, who's
right.
better, whatever. I'm going to go and I'm going to work on bladder cancer. And our
Funny you should
community,
mention that. I was gonna ask you that because there was a judge at Madison Square Garden, the big February show in New York City. And so I was covering it for this show for as media, and he had been a Kerry Blue Terrier breeder. He and I'm saying this not to speak ill of Kerry Blue Terriers, but what was happening was they were reaching middle age or even 10 years old, and they were getting it may have been kidney cancer, but I believe it was bladder cancer, and they were dying. And he
yeah.
said, I can't live through this anymore. I can't put any more puppies on the earth where this is going to happen. And he switched to Glenavimale Terriers, which were very rare, and there were very few of them. In fact, when I was ready to get another dog, I thought, maybe I should get a Glenavimale Terrier because there aren't a lot of them, so maybe they don't have genetic problems. We think about this, but bladder cancer is hugely important. Is it Westies or Scotties who get it
So
a lot?
it's Scottish Terriers have the highest incidence. So if you're a Scottish Terrier, your odds of getting it are about 22-fold higher than the average mixed breed dog walking down the street. And in terms of human cancer genetics, boy, that's just an extraordinary number we just don't
Yes,
see for the most
yes,
part in human cancer genetics. West Highland White Terriers are at about a 6-fold increased risk. Shelties are at about a 5 or 6-fold increased risk. There are large studies, clinical studies at Purdue in terms of early diagnosis and thinking about treatment. Our lab has been focused on trying to find the susceptibility genes so that you
nice.
can get your dog tested and see what their risk is. And if they have a risk, gee, let's do frequent screening. Let's focus
Right,
on early detection. Is there anything that can be done in terms of diet or other
correct.
lifestyle factors?
Yes,
And bladder cancer in both humans and dogs is not obviously a good thing to get.
right,
And if it's metastatic at the time it's diagnosed, gee, most of those
right.
dogs are going to pass within a year or so. If it's metastatic when it's diagnosed, which all too frequently, I'm afraid it is.
And in people too, right? Can be have already
Yes,
spread.
absolutely. People, it's a little bit different because one of the big risk factors is actually smoking. And so there have certainly been hints that secondhand smoke in households may increase a dog's risk.
Right,
There's been one study that I know of that suggests that. I think a lot more work needs to be done in that area
right.
to address those sorts of things. But for sure, in humans, smoking is a risk factor. But of course, it's one of those quality of life cancers. You don't get to ignore it in between rounds of chemotherapy. It's there, you're present, you're dealing with it every single day. You're never allowed to forget it. I often talk to human patients and they'll say to me, I want to get one of, if I have to get cancer, I want one of those that I can forget I have in between treatments. I
Now,
want to be able to
that's a
pretend.
strange wish list. I
But
mean, I
they say
get it,
that,
but
yeah, they obviously have family members who have had
right,
cancer, so they think about something like that. I don't want one of those that I have to think about every single minute of every single
right.
day. And that's what we want for our dogs too. We want quality of life
The
with
lucky
every.
thing is they don't know what the big C means.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if they have a cancer like you were talking about osteosarcoma and it hasn't spread, but it's in the bone, and maybe you do a limb removal because that tends to
Mhm.
be the best treatment. And then they
Yep.
have up to a year, 6 to 8 months to a year of quality of life, and they learn how to be a tripod easily. And whatever chemo might be given doesn't affect their wellness at all. They'll never
Yeah.
know they had cancer. That's the beauty of
Nope.
being a
Nope.
dog.
They'll never know. But if you're a Birdie's mountain dog, where the risk for histiocytic sarcoma is 20% and
Ouch.
it's uniformly lethal, or a
Yes.
flat-coated retriever, where again, histiocytic sarcoma, really bad disease, lethal. And again, the numbers are high for the percent of dogs that are going to get them. And both of those are gorgeous dogs. I've had people in my lab who have owned each of those dogs. They're
Wow.
gorgeous. They're great. Burners are
I
great
wanted I
family
wanted a
dogs.
flat-coated retriever. They're so beautiful.
They're
It's like a
so
black golden
beautiful.
retriever, but with less fur, less feathers. It's
They're smaller and they have that deep midnight black
yes,
color, you
shiny.
know, and they're the ones I've known, and I'm not a behaviorist of retrievers, but the ones I've known have been pretty work oriented, but calmer dogs, I think, than a lot of the Goldens that I know. And that may be, I may get 100,000 Golden Retriever people that call me tomorrow and tell me I'm wrong. So
Yeah, but
I
this is coming
apologize
from
in
a
advance.
but this is coming from a woman who owns a border collie. Let's put this in perspective. How would she know what a
Right.
work-oriented dog is like because she owns the most work-oriented dog? You've just one second, you've talked about these
Sure.
20%, 22%. What is the percent that you know off the top of your head for especially large male golden retrievers and the osteosarcoma they get?
So let me just say the 22% is an odds ratio, 22-fold
Right.
higher risk.
Oh,
25% is just a flat out
got
percentage.
it. Okay.
25% of burners or 20% of flat coats.
We'll get it.
Yeah, so osteosarcoma, I don't know for the large Goldens how many will get osteo. I honestly just don't know.
But it's
Truth.
a bad number. They say it's about
Is
half
that
of
right?
large male Goldens will get cancer.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
it's
I
a
didn't know. I don't
terrifying
think I'd
number.
ask.
I just
Wow.
like when you said earlier, my heart goes out to the people who own these dogs and get them, whether they buy a puppy or they rehome a dog. And if you got to know going in, to the best of your ability to know these things, that you might be on a banana peel. And like you said, if there's a test and then feed differently, supplementation, a lot of the supplements actually do address inflammation in the body. And since
Yeah.
cancer is an inflammatory disease, maybe you could start giving supplements sooner.
Well, a really good piece of news about golden retrievers is there was a study started several years, again, lots of collaboration, called the Golden Retriever
I
Lifetime
remember a
Study.
thousand, 10,000 dogs.
1,000 dogs, and the idea is they were enrolled as puppies and they were followed throughout their life with everything, medical records and blood samples and serum
Right,
samples and urine samples and interviews and behavior. And they were interviewed at least every year, and data was collected, samples were
right,
collected. As dogs aged and got sick, for instance, they got lymphoma, which is an issue in golden
right,
retrievers. Tumors were saved, especially the exquisite medical records. That was just really great. And so that study is really maturing now. And that is going to be an unbelievable resource for tackling so many health problems in golden retrievers. And
yes,
it was so well done. I think it's really going to be a model for many other communities, right?
right,
You need to do this, right? You need to
right.
do this for your breed as well. And
And
they
I may
did it
be wrong.
right.
Maybe it's lymphoma that they're at the most risk for, not osteosarcoma. And
Yeah,
the
I'm pretty sure
50%
that's right.
is
Yeah.
large males. It's golden, it's large males that cut one
Certainly
line.
Goldens are at a big risk for lymphoma. That for
Lymphoma, not
sure is true.
osteosarcoma.
Yeah, I
But
hadn't heard the osteo.
I think the boxers are osteosarcoma.
Boxers are at risk for osteosarcoma as well as some other cancers. And the first time I went and talked at the Boxer Club many years, or 25 years ago, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about cancer risk and genetic
That's right.
testing. And I felt like I was a voice in the wilderness talking about this for the
Uh,
first time to the club. But they were really receptive. And now when you talk to owners or members of the club, they know this stuff. What
right,
if it's only partially dominant
right,
and there's
right.
also a recessive modifier? And I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, this is a different
yeah.
club than it was 25 or
Well,
30 years
uh,
ago.
just in conclusion, I want to say that you are one of the reasons that these breeders and the people who want to own these dogs are smarter and more knowledgeable and more woken about it and aware and trying to whatever that might be because they want that breed. It means
They
so much to
do.
them. Those characteristics mean so much. You've done amazing work. You continue to
Thank
do
you.
amazing work. I'm looking
Thank
forward and hoping you can come back and we'll talk about other
Absolutely.
breeds or ongoing work, and then also
Sure.
the whole bridge between humans and dogs and what we humans can selfishly learn from the dogs for
Oh,
ourselves.
I'd be happy to talk about that
That
and
would be great.
dog breeds and whatever it is you'd
Yes,
like. I've enjoyed this
wonderful.
so
Well, it's
very much.
been a delight. You're just a fountain of knowledge and of optimism in the face of what might be obstacles, but you see them as challenges. And I think that's a wonderful attitude.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, Elaine. Look forward to having you come back and talk and give us more advice and information. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for having me so
Take
much.
care.
Bye.